recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation and around the world. You're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. My name is John Troyer, broadcasting here live up above Kendall Square in VMware's Cambridge office. Today, I'm very pleased to have a couple of different guests today. We're going to have two different main topics today. This is podcast number 144. Our first topic is the recent announcement of the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange Financial Services Community Cloud. And we're also going to be talking about a new beta that we released over on the vFabric side, which is SQLFire. And we'll be joined a little bit later by Carter Shanklin, who will explain what's going on there and why we should care. Let's see, we have a few news updates. I can talk about, oh my goodness, somebody mute that, please. We'll go on and talk about some updates, what's going on with the VM world and the vExperts, and everything that you should know about going into the summer here. I know a lot of people are on the road this week. There's an HP Discover event. There's a Dell event. There's also Tech Field Day, and I'll talk about that in a little bit after the news. But right now, let's start, as we always do these days, with Alex Meyer and the news. Alex, how are you?
I am doing great, and good day to everyone in the intertubes. Here is this week's news. I'm going to start with Facebook because I'm edgy like that. On Facebook, the vCloud team has shared a pretty cool video showing how to configure firewall settings in vCloud Express. And also they shared an interesting article in which our CEO, Paul Moritz, is hinting that an elite group of providers will soon offer VMware infrastructure for hybrid enterprise cloud. Super interesting. So you can find it all on facebook.com/VMwareVCloud. Yesterday, we also launched a different beta for vCenter Converter 5.0 standalone. You can find that on VMTN community if you go to communities.vmware.com. On the right-hand side, there's a navigation where it will say VMware beta programs, and you click on those, and the new converter beta will be listed there. We'll talk about the SQLFire separately, so I'll leave it to later. Early bird pricing for VMworld registration is ending on the 24th of June. So the time is running out if you want to save some cash for yourself or for your company. And there are a bunch of cool events coming up over the next week or so. The VMware Forum is making a stop in Houston today. And then it continues on to Frankfurt, Brussels, Chicago, Rome, Edinburgh, and Milan. The web page with details is, as usual, linked from VMware.com homepage in the gray box that says VMware Forum 2011. A ton of webinars coming up soon. I won't even be able to name them all here. And the topics range from transition to vSphere, ESXi, desktop virtualization, cloud computing, virtualization in hospitals, downtime prevention. There are even more webinars listed there than I have time to mention. So just go, and if you're interested, have a look at webcasts.vmware.com, and they're all there. It's a full page of like 15 webinars. A full-day regional VMUG conference is coming up in Vancouver on the 21st of June. So if you're in the area, put this on your calendars. You will know that a regional conference is more than just your usual VMUG meeting. It's frequently a full-day conference with a full agenda and a lot of interesting speakers. And from what I understand, John will be speaking there, so there's your additional motivation to go. And the following VMUGs are meeting over the next 7 days in Switzerland, Hungary, Barcelona, San Francisco, Israel, and Omaha. You can find more details and registration links for all the VMUG meetings at myvmug.org and click on events. And I also hear that there is a Tech Field Day coming up. So, John, why don't you tell us about that?
Sure, Alex. That's why I am here in Boston this week. This is Tech Field Day number 6, although I think his numbering is funny because I think he doesn't number the specialized Tech Field Days like that. Stephen Foskett, the man about town and raconteur who is responsible for the Tech Field Day events that fly in bloggers from all over the world for 2 days of intensive briefings, has landed here in Boston. This one's focused on virtualization. So they're hearing from a number of virtualization-focused companies, most of which aren't in the area, but we've all come on in. including VMware sponsoring one of the segments, and we're offering up our lunchroom here in Cambridge for the festivities tomorrow afternoon. So a lot of folks that you may know, I don't have the page in front of me, but some folks that are often here on the podcast, including our own Edward Haletke, we were just mentioning on chat, are in transit today to Boston, where they will be coming to the event. It should be a really good event. We're having some engineers talk at all streams live, so I definitely would check out the webpage over at techfieldday.com. It's usually pretty interesting. They actually get pretty punchy by the end of day 2, so that's maybe more entertaining on the second day. But you should definitely check it out. There is a VM Underground party. There often is a party, or there always is a party for Tech Field Day the first night. This one is a little bit unusual because it's open to the public, or it's open to more people. Usually it's just a private affair. So they do have tickets still available if you're anywhere in the New England region and want to drive in tomorrow afternoon to Fenway. Come and join us. It should be a good party because it's a VM Underground party, and a VM Underground party means it rocks. So Theron is going to be there, who's one, I don't know, do I count him as one half or one portion of the VMware Underground conspiracy? And it should be a very good party. Also, Jason Bakke will be there. He just joined Dell Compellent, so he can't actually be one of the delegates, but he will be at the party as well. Definitely worth coming to. I am going to be excited and be there as well. So Tech Field Day, check it out. It's on techfieldday.com. Let's see. I also saw on chat that the mother of I was going to call it the mother of all VMUGs, and that's not. I don't know if that's quite accurate. But anyway, the New England VMUG registration is open. There's some more regional VMUGs in a neighborhood near you. Check them out. I'm also actually now, since you gave me the mic, I'm reluctant to hand it back, Alex.
Oh, you can keep it. You can keep it. That was all the news.
Okay.
I know you, so I never hand you the mic before I'm done.
Well, I was going to ask about Converter. What do people think of Converter? I was hearing. It sounds like one of the cool things is it finally does disk alignment as it's doing its converting, which has been kind of it's been this weird thing that it's been a best practice for years, but since every disk vendor does it differently, every SAN storage vendor does it differently. It hasn't been. It's always been like this weird thing where it's never in one document. You always got to go to 6 places to find out what's going on. Over the last couple of years. Anyway, has anybody tried out Converter? It sounds like it's a good release.
I downloaded it, haven't installed it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I want to fix all my VMs.
It's the kind of thing where at this point in 2011, you don't think much about Converter, but it's insanely complicated. And when it fails, and then you got to go back and pick up the pieces.
Well,
it's kind of cool that it works.
What's been frustrating is anytime you've run Converter in the past, like maybe to increase a disk size or something like that, even if you were in alignment, you were put out of alignment. So this fixes that, and that's a really awesome thing.
That's very good.
Yeah, it's still an important tool for today.
Yeah, you forget. Well, there's a lot of cases where, I guess, there's still both cases. That was Rick, right?
Yeah, that was me. I use it all the time.
I mean, there's still cases where it's at this point in 2011. Is it considered a quick and dirty mechanism for cleaning up your mess, or is it because lots of times you do want to start off with a clean gold master VM built for VMs, with the right number of NICs and the right services installed and things like that. These days, I mean, are converted VMs still a P2V, as we used to say, VM still kind of a staple of your data center? Feel free to jump in.
Well, I'm helping out some people, that second wave, that are just now starting to get onto that virtualization thing, and that's the tool I'm pointing them at. And of course, I'll explain that a rebuild is cleaner, but some of these second wave candidates don't always have the resources, know-how, time, application understanding, those types of things to do it. So I still think it's a critical tool.
This is Mike. We use it. We had a PIS. We do it for more for resizing.
Ooh.
Echo.
You got to mute your screen. Yeah. Hey, Mike?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We use it more for resizing. We're seeing it a lot for that. If people need to change instead of having to go through the more complicated process of resizing the system drive, we see Converter a lot for that. But then using it for just a one-off.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's nice to know it's still an important part of people's toolkit or a necessary part of people's toolkit.
The only thing it needs now is PowerShell commandlets.
Well, put that in the beta forum. Put it as a suggestion. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's move forward. Let's see. We talked about Tech Field Day. We talked about Converter. I promised you I was going to tell a little bit about VMworld and the vExperts. As far as so the VMworld catalog now open for viewing, your viewing pleasure. Now it is not the complete catalog. I think they are still considering a few submissions, so they'll sneak some more in there. And anything about futures, because there might be some products announced between now and VMworld. Those aren't there yet. So if anything would give away a secret, those aren't there. Now, you should kind of troll the catalog because we make mistakes all the time. So if you do want to scoop, just watch that every week and see what we publish. So the accepts and declines have gone out for people's sessions for the most part. There will be the most excellent session, which is the ESXi quiz show by Duncan Epping, Pablo Roche, and myself. We're still kind of firming up what it should be. Steve Harrod said he was in. What we wanted to do was take the session format, make it a little more fun. I hope we can stream it live on the web. We're trying. I think we will. I don't know why we wouldn't. And so we're not quite sure how we're going to pick the contestants. There's a few different plans that we're talking about. But anyway, so that should be fun. I think we're not going to turn it. At one point, I had a proposal for this elaborate series of pre-sessions where different teams would go up and we'd do a tournament, but that turned into way too much work. Anyway, so that should be a fun session. A couple of panels look good. I think we'll try to stream those, and we'll see how it goes. And Alex, we're still planning the lounge. I don't think we have any news on the social media lounge as of yet. A lot of cool proposals. Yes,
we have a lot of cool ideas, and I hope that we can implement them all, or most of them. But I guess one thing is sure that we will have some sort of a schedule there and events happening at the lounge, as well as sponsoring some activities.
Great. And I promise you we will have some really ugly shirts to give away. That's my prediction.
Always.
That's not a promise, that's a prediction.
Well, anyway. I guess it's the same.
Well, when I heard our boss Eric talking about the shirts, all I could think of was those are going to be very ugly. So just get them there first. You heard it here first. Anyway, let's keep on moving. We've got a show to do. I think did I cover everything, Alex? I think we did for the moment.
I think we did. So yeah, SQLFire later.
Okay. Great, when Carter gets here. Well, I wanted to, we touched on this briefly last week, and the gentlemen who are here today kind of reached out to me and said they thought it was really interesting and there was some more fodder for more discussion, and so we have them on this week here for the next 20 minutes or so. So very pleased to welcome to the show Scott Key, who's our Director of Financial Services for the Financial Services vertical, working, for translating. So for so long, VMware didn't do a whole lot of vertical marketing. Right? We were a very horizontal company. All of our marketing was kind of general. We were always kind of bottoms up and hands-on. Well, now that we're a little bigger, we have a team of folks reaching out to various verticals. Financial services being one of them. It's always been, a key set of customers for us. So Scott, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you on.
Thank you, John.
And also we have Martin Petrago, who is the ISV Alliance Manager for the Financial Services vertical, who is a listener to the podcast from what I understand, and really pleased to have him on as well. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
Great. Well, so Scott, we talked about it a little bit. The announcement came out, I think, last Wednesday, so it was brand new. We touched on it a bit, but can you give us the 50,000-foot overview of what was announced and why it's important?
Absolutely. So the announcement that came out last Wednesday was to announce the world's first financial services community cloud that is being hosted by the New York Stock Exchange, or more exact, the NYSE Technologies Group, which is a company within the New York Stock Exchange that runs the technology services that are provided out to financial services customers. So this cloud is unique for a few reasons. One, as I already stated, it's really the first financial services community cloud. But, unlike a cloud that might come to bear from a Verizon or a Colt or T-Mobile system, something like that, this cloud is coming from a vendor that is already in the financial services community. And one of the interesting things is the New York Stock Exchange has co-located infrastructure for many of the large banks for many years to give the capital markets divisions of those banks quick access to market data for low latency trading. So there's already a hosting relationship that's been there. The difference is that the racks and things that have been in the New York Stock Exchange data centers from the larger banks over the years have been racks and servers that are owned and completely controlled by those banks. And they pay a big premium to have that to rent that space in there on top of what they have to pay for their servers and so forth and so on. So now they're giving an option of flexibility not just to those banks, but to hedge funds, smaller banks that have a need to be in the capital market space and have access to market data. They can now have VMs to be able to run applications that they couldn't run, in a low latency format or close to that market data before. They had to pull that data across the wire, be it either historical market data for analysis purposes or actual trading activity. So that's one of the unique things that really nobody else within the service provider, typical hosting service provider industry today can offer the financial services community. The other big thing is that the New York Stock Exchange owns a network that is called SAFETY, and it stands for Secure Transaction Financial Infrastructure, and it's SFTI and called SAFETY, which is a nice name for it based on all the security concerns that the financial services industry has around public usage of any computing or networking. So this network was actually formed as a post-9/11 government reaction to have a more secure network that the financial markets could run in case we had another disaster like we did at 9/11 or some other natural disaster like the recent tornadoes and earthquakes, et cetera. So several years ago, the government or a group of governments, I think as it was, asked the New York Stock Exchange, who basically with Euronext and a merger coming up with, I forget the exact name of it now, but a large German exchange, they manage 19 markets globally. So with that much market data out there, the government's asked the New York Stock Exchange to actually build this network called SAFETY and to manage it and own it. So most all of your major financial firms are already members of this SAFETY network, and it is a completely isolated and closed network for financial data, for market data. So the nice thing is that this cloud will now live within that SAFETY network. So that starts to immediately resolve a lot of the security concerns that the banks have had with any public cloud offering, and gives them a secure place that only financial firms are allowed into. The access is very limited. The network is very controlled. So they'll have access into that network and have VMs within the cloud. And also using VMware products like vShield to manage security from a group of VMs or VM to VM to manage the multi-tenant function that they'll have now with the multiple banks having access into the cloud.
Gotcha. Actually, I have a quick I don't know if it's structural technical question. Sure. So will this hold some of the? It sounds like this we'll be holding some of the real-time trading apps for the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it will, but the main goal of this is not to replace the low latency trading apps that typically have lived in a more physical environment and have been co-located. The goal of this cloud is to really allow for the supporting applications around those low latency trading apps to now be ran beside those low latency trading apps in a virtual format and a cloud. So basically, I'll give you a couple of quick examples. So risk analysis, repricing functions, those types of things that use market data, most of the banks don't run those inside of their co-located equipment at the exchanges because of the cost of having that equipment there. So what they do is they pull all that data across the wire, and over time, and with intraday trading becoming bigger and bigger, and the change is now becoming happening in milliseconds rather than minutes or hours, they've pulled all this data across to their data centers, and the pipes that exist now between the NYSE data centers and these larger banks have grown to be very big and very costly for the banks, especially when they're pulling historical market data, which they can only get at like 11:30 p.m. at night, and for an X number of hours can they access that data, and that data is from historical, but historical being the previous day and beyond. Now they have access to that data in a real-time fashion throughout this cloud, and they can run VMs in that cloud to be able to manage that data. And another quick example would be like post-trading statementing systems, where they have to pull all the data from the trades that have happened and then print out statements for clients and things to go out. Now those types of offerings and the third-party software companies that offer those will be provided as a SaaS function within the community cloud for the banks to use, rather than having to run that in their data center and, of course, pull that data back and forth across those
cool.
pipes.
So, yeah, then my question, I'm a big believer in that virtual performance is pretty much suitable for 99.999% of enterprise applications, both from a speed and a overhead and a size and capacity perspective. But I was just wondering, the one use case, if you're really counting on milliseconds for your robots to be trading faster than the other guy's robots, I don't know if you want those virtualized. But I don't think that you're right. It sounds like that's not where most of the hard work and most of the maintenance and most of the rest of the work goes on.
Right, and your large firms out there, your Cities, Chase, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, those large firms are going to leave that their low latency, which they build those apps in-house. That's their intellectual property. That's what they try to use to differentiate themselves from their competitors. That's going to stay in a physical environment co-located there at the exchange. But a lot of your hedge funds and other companies who don't really do true low latency trading, so they're not concerned about that nanosecond type trading, they will run their trading in these VMs because, again, that low latency at the level that the large banks are doing it, is not really a concern for a lot of the hedge funds and other types of companies. So there will be trading apps running in this, not your low latency ones that are discussed quite often that the larger firms are running.
Well, those seem very weird and snow crashy, and I don't quite understand them anyway. So, hey, I want to ask some questions about community clouds in general, and maybe if we can talk at all about kind of architecture trends or anything, Scott and Martin, you guys can tell us about. Well, we'll talk about some of the business and how this is a model for, it sounds like, for different vendors to come in and service a community. But I did want to ask the folks on the call, do you guys have any questions, or you want to know more about this? What direction do you want us to go? No, so please get on chat or let me know another way if you do have a question. So can you talk a little bit about? Well, first of all, do we know anything about the architecture? Is there anything unusual? I mean, I take it it's using VCD and using vShield.
Correct.
Are there any other? I mean, this is an audience of VMware admins and more. Is there anything that would be useful for them to know about how the NYSE and EMC and the different collaborators on this project have approached it?
Sure. So there's really not anything, I guess, unique about the architecture of this. It's using the standard VMware products that we've put out to the market to build this exact type of cloud, right? So, of course, it's using vSphere, it's using the ESXi version. vCloud Director is being used to manage the provisioning of the cloud. vShield Manager is being used to manage the VPN or the virtual networks that are wrapped around either the VMs or groups of VMs that each of the customers are gonna want to manage that security level. They're using EMC storage. The VNX 5500, I think, is the actual storage that they're using. Trying to think if they are using Chargeback, and they'll use that to manage all of their billing, our vCenter Chargeback tool. but other than that, like I said earlier when I mentioned the safety network, I mean, that's one of the big pieces that was already there, and this cloud actually lives within that network itself. So, that's a big piece that already makes this unique, but isn't necessarily part of the cloud that we've built here. It just happens to be able to live within that network. The rest of it is pretty standard, and really, one of the messages that we're starting to push now with this is a cloud that can be built, whether it's private in someone else's data center, or any other cloud out in a community fashion or a public cloud. These are the same tools that are available to others to use. And if the financial services community, and in the last week, the quotes and the articles and things that have been written on this from within the financial services world, they seem quite happy about the security, at least what they've learned about it so far, and the handful of customers that are doing beta testing. The security seems to be really good. The customers are happy with it. And, one of the things that we want to push is, if the security is good enough to manage the market data and those types of things, then it's probably going to be good enough to manage any type of workload out there today.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I think everybody kind of senses that, and that's why we wanted to talk about it both last week and this week. It seemed pretty interesting from a multi-tenancy perspective. So can you guys talk a little bit about the concept of community cloud? I mean, one way that security, is, where am I going with this? One reason you have a community cloud is one, you need capabilities that are not in a kind of a standard commodity public cloud. Not from a big cloud provider, et cetera. Another is security. And for instance, if you're up on, and I'll just use Amazon as an example, but I mean this applies to any standard commodity cloud offering that's not from VMware. You're not sure who your neighbors are. You're not sure if they're noisy. You're not sure if they're hackers. You're not sure. Who knows? I mean, I don't want to be too alarmist, but there's all sorts of stuff going on in the Amazon cloud right now. Botnets and God knows what else. So can you talk a little bit about the concept of community cloud? I've heard of them also in terms of local governments and school districts, universities. It sounds like a really interesting concept. I mean, it sounds like here security was a piece of it, but also it's what's the driver for driving towards community cloud? It seems intuitively friendlier for groups for somebody to offer, either industry consortia or government consortia to be able to offer this. But how do you see, Scott and Martin, people thinking about this that drives them to formation of this kind of community cloud?
Sure. So I'll start, and I'm sure Martin's got even more to add than what I can give to that. But I would say that a community cloud is going to be a unique offering that's specific to that community, right? So let's see, to try to think up some type of a comparison. So if you've ever been on cruises, right? They do cruises where you can take your family and go on a generic cruise, but they also do these like themed cruises you can go on that are for a certain age group or for a certain type of people that like this certain thing, and all the shows and all the stuff on that cruise is all wrapped around that. These clouds are similar to that in that whatever community you're trying to address, it's making that cloud unique, the offerings within it. For the financial services one here, as you mentioned, one of the biggest things is security. So there's some security stuff here that NYSE is able to offer that really no one else can with the safety network and other things. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be several SaaS offerings within this cloud of third-party providers that are specific to the financial services and really to the capital markets industry that will offer their services and their software as a SaaS model within this cloud to all of those, to the community that's in the cloud. So it creates a marketplace within the cloud for vendors to come in and say, all right, here's our services available to anyone that's in this cloud. And I know there's discussions around similar clouds being built right now for government and for healthcare, which are two other industry verticals that we concentrate on at VMware. This happens to be really the first, not just the first in financial services, but really the first major community cloud that we're aware of, that has a real significant purpose to it. And one of the things that we're starting to see is a lot of your CIOs and others in the companies who have heard cloud, they see something like this, at least those in the financial services space, and they say, okay, this starts to make sense. I see where I could actually use this, where my company could take advantage of this, and it really starts to kind of put some definition and some boundaries around what is cloud computing, which is a question that many people have been asking, and there's been lots of answers out there for quite some time. So, Martine, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that with some of the ISVs that are, I know, interested in not just this cloud but other community clouds.
Yeah, I'm just checking out some of the chat, and they're making points about smaller hedge funds. So that's exactly right. I'll just give you some use cases. First, I'll talk about the types of platforms. So if whoever's on the chat that is in the financial capital markets will probably know these acronyms, but essentially order management systems, some of the vendors you might be familiar with are Advent Software here in San Francisco, SunGard Valdi, which is a trade order management, DST, which is for compliance. And all these order management systems do is you as a trader or you as a retail trader execute a trade. But even though that trade has gone through the network and the matching engines at the exchange execute that, there's still quite a bit of management and compliance that has to happen, and that's exactly what these systems do. So you're probably familiar with market data systems, and that is Thomson Reuters, Bloomberg, Interactive Data, and Active Finance. If you're here in the Bay Area, there's a startup called Zignite that provides market data, and you buy those feeds to upload into those order management systems or in algorithmic trading. So you can do some of the things that Scott described. And really it's what I've seen on the chat, the smaller mutual funds and hedge funds could not necessarily fund that. They do not want to have infrastructure. So if they could have an easy way and secure way to access the matching engine compared to the larger banks, that kind of levels the playing field, not so much on the high-frequency trading, but at least it gives them an equal playing field with infrastructure and matching their calibration, all their calculations of trade. So for hedge funds, it's provisioning quickly, getting that regulatory document and history back in a timely fashion, secure, so that they can correctly trade on the next day.
Yeah, and Martine, I just saw that somebody posted something on the chat about is there a screening to prevent, a hacker-like person from getting in and being noisy within this network, or can any financial institution apply? So you have to be a member of the safety network to be able to take part in this community cloud, and there is a very strict process and application and specific user IDs within the company, et cetera, to get into the safety network. So that's really the barrier of entry. And I know for right now, NYSE is looking at really letting new capital markets type companies come in. I'm sure, hedge funds would be an example that would go through that process. They're not really looking to let in insurance companies at this stage, at least, which we consider part of financial services, but right now they're focusing more on those firms that have a capital markets presence. So if they can kind of prove they have a capital markets need, then they might let them in. But, some of that may open up a little bit as we move forward. But I really expect to see more community clouds coming up that maybe aren't so capital market specific, but more financial services overall that will come up from some of our more well-known hosting providers, service providers in the very near future. And I know, that some of the other exchanges and some of the other third-party market data providers and others are looking at doing the same thing that the New York Stock Exchange just did.
Does whoops, we're getting a little bit of a whine here. Hopefully it will go away. So another question is, in the public cloud conversation, in the enterprise cloud conversation, kind of the bigger cloudy cloud conversation that goes on at conferences, not necessarily the let's get stuff done conversation that goes on with VMware customers. They're coming to the realization, a lot of the pushback for not used for private clouds versus public clouds and the folks that have really embraced public clouds and have been able to re-architect their apps to take advantage of it and the different failure modes and security, et cetera. They didn't quite understand. They were like, well, the cost is so much less. The cost is so much less. And I think there's been a growing, at least I've seen there's been a growing understanding that for the enterprise, a lot of the time, it's not about the cost, it's about speed, agility, being able to react. And that's one of the drivers for private and hybrid clouds. Has that been a driver as well for the NYSE ecosystem here? Do they feel like they're going to be able to, now that they're all on this cloud, is there a speed advantage as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Time to market has been a big piece that that NYSE has pushed and that we've talked about throughout the progression of this cloud as it's come to bear. So, one of the things is if you have co-located equipment today, as we mentioned earlier, getting new servers ordered and into that is actually even longer than if you were trying to do physical servers in your own data center, just because you have to go through the processes at NYSE to get it in there, et cetera. So for those banks, they now have ways to spin up new things. Maybe they spin up some VMs in the cloud to try some things out to make sure that it's working the way they want it to, that it scales, whatever the case might be, and then they may bring it into a more physical environment. Another thing to mention is that this is not just VMs. Within the cloud, they're offering physical blades as well. So you can get VMs or physical blades or both within their cloud offering. So you still have a physical presence if you feel you need a dedicated blade with specific profile wrapped around it. So they're also offering that service at the same time.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, this has been really cool. Where can people find out more? I know there've been a whole lot of news stories written about it. And I guess did we do a press release? I think we did.
Well, it was a joint press release that came out from the New York Stock Exchange. So if you go out to NYSE.com and you go under, I think, the media or I think it's industry relations, something like that, you can see the press release there. There have been several articles. If you just go Google NYSE Cloud, you'll see there's about 60, 70 articles that have been written since last Wednesday from several different publications, so you can read those. We plan from a VMware standpoint to release some more content, both internal and public as well, about this in the coming probably couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that. And you can also go to VMware.com, and there's a banner on the very top of VMware.com right now that points to the press release and to the webcast. So there's a webcast out there of the entire press conference that the executives from both NYSE, VMware, and EMC did with questions and everything. So I would strongly suggest to go out and watch that if you want to know a little bit more information. There were some really good questions asked and answered in that session. And there'll be a lot more coming out about this over the next, 2 to 4 weeks or so.
Great. Well, guys, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. This was really interesting. I know I saw on chat people were asking about, more information on healthcare community clouds and government healthcare community clouds. I think it's going to be a really interesting next year or two, it sounds like.
I think so, yes.
Cool. Well, great. So hopefully we'll have more on that. I think as more of these get built, it'll be easier to talk about them too, because we'll have some real examples of why they were built and what advantages they give. It just sounds, I know Steve Harrod likes to talk about the government ones. I think it's pretty fascinating. Well, thanks again, guys. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Martine.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Well, in the remaining time, I wanted to move forward. We have a friend of the podcast, Carter Shanklin, on, who is now over on the vFabric side, and wanted to talk about SQLFire a little bit today. Carter, are you there?
Hey, John. What's up?
Hey, great. Glad you made it out of your briefing and made it over here to your local phone. So I saw going out on the news in the last day or two that the SQLFire beta has gone out. And so maybe you could give us a little bit of orientation about what it is and why it's interesting.
Okay, sure. So, the SQLFire beta we did announce it yesterday, And SQLFire is, you can think of it sort of like an in-memory database, although we like to use a lot of nuance around here. So I think that's kind of the simple summary way to think about it, but it's not strictly an in-memory database. It can actually sort of persist data to disk, but the key attributes of it are that it is horizontally scalable, so you can sort of expand and contract it almost at will. It's shared nothing, so it's got built-in fault tolerance and high availability, and it's really designed to be a database that's very fast, very scalable, and very available. And it also uses the SQL model. So a lot of the cool new database technologies out there, they use a lot of these principles in terms of share nothing, scale out, high availability built in, and all of that other stuff. But they do it without having any sort of SQL data model. And we think that that's great for some use cases, but we think there may be some people out there who like that model and who want to continue using it, but they want to do so while continuing to benefit from all those advantages of shared nothing scale out.
Right.
And so we think it's a good match actually for virtualization, and the reason is because you want to deliver that capacity on demand promise, and we think that using ESX, using vSphere, vCloud, and all the other stuff is a great way to do that because you can just burst in, burst out anytime you feel like it.
Now, when I was Googling this a little bit last night, I saw this was associated with GemFire. Was this did this come in from the Gemstone team when they joined our team, or was this a new project?
It was under development when we acquired Gemstone last year. It's been under development, I think, for about 2 years now, a little under 2 years. So it's been cooking for a while. We did get the technology from the Gemstone acquisition, and it is actually built on top of GemFire, but you don't need to be a GemFire expert, or you don't even need to know anything about GemFire to use it.
Gotcha. So a typical use case here would be a new app you're building. You need you know that you're going to need a cluster of these things, and you're going to architect with a shared nothing kind of modern architecture because you've got lots of reads or whatever.
Yeah.
And instead of, this is a tool in the toolbox, so instead of a NoSQL database, of which there are now half a dozen that are widely used, this one's the same sort of idea, but you can still use SQL.
Yeah. So some of the benefits are you don't have to capacity plan quite as hard right up front. That's a very hard thing for people to do. It's like, how big of a database do I need? You can actually add capacity on demand, which is good. And we think because it's in memory, it's really meant for speed. And we think that a lot of interesting data sets will fit in memory these days, and we're really trying to push around that. But web apps, good for web apps. It'll be interesting to see, if people consider sort of moving existing apps onto this because they have some speed problems. A lot of times when we talk to people about GemFire, one of the things that really piques their interest about it is we support geographic replication, so you can run the same essentially database in different geographies at the same time. And that's when people say I might consider re-architecting an existing app, that's one of the reasons they might do that very, very expensive and very difficult process. And SQLFire actually has that as well. You can actually run it in different locations with the same data.
Okay. So in kind of a replication mode?
Yeah.
Or?
It uses an asynchronous replication.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, I heard somebody asking about Redis on the chat here. Pretty soon we're going to have to provide a roadmap for people to navigate all these choices. Redis is another. It's a key value store. It's
I was
in
thinking
memory
more
too.
of a decoder ring, and we could give it away in boxes of cereal at VMworld.
You come to VMworld, you get a decoder ring. I have needs X, Y, and Z. Then you should use product A.
Yeah.
So
you could have 3 sections, and you spin it to the needs that you have, and then at the bottom it'll tell you what database to use.
And for extra
brilliant
credit,
idea, John.
Okay,
thank you for volunteering to put that together for VMworld.
That's okay. That's going to be on my. That's why I'm going to join product marketing because I have great ideas like that. So As you so now, are you working with? You thought it would be an interesting idea to come talk on it. Are you going out and talking to developers these days, Carter?
Well, I'm trying to every chance I get, but gosh, I just I'm underwater all the time. But yes, I think that with this, a lot of times people come to us. I mean, that's one of the nice things about being here in Palo Alto is people will make the big journey over here. So you can talk to a few people that way. They tend to be architect-y types and maybe not necessarily down with the latest and greatest technologies. But yeah, I definitely want to start hitting the bricks a bit more and talking to developers. I think that's very important, and I think this is a great product to do that because you tell people about Gemfire. It's a in-memory key value store with horizontal scale out, geosynchrony. You quickly see people's eyes glaze over if they're not really deep savvy web guys. Yeah. That's just kind of the state of the market right now. But if you say, hey, this in-memory SQL database, everybody knows what that is. So it's a little bit more accessible to people in some ways.
Should be screamingly fast, yeah. Yeah, help us re-architect this damn Jive community we have.
That would be great. And it's amazing. They actually went and built their own in-memory data grid. We could have just given them ours.
Yeah. It's we run. I mean, we have an interesting use case here in that they have a Java app that's grown up over the last couple of years, and I'm sure they've done some smart things and some dumb things inside of it. But it's taken them years to get here, and us and Apple and a few others. I mean, we there's some huge communities on it, and I think we're kind of pushing the limits of what it can do.
Yeah.
Between you, me, and the lamppost, and I don't know if Alex is still on here. So, but it's a challenge, right? Because no longer. I mean, this is a case where we're offering a public service. It's kind of slow. I'll be honest. It's a little bit. I mean, it's still very useful, but it's kind of slow depending on the day. And I'm used to, and everybody else is used to, Google speed response, right? I want sub-second response. It works for Google. It works for Facebook's a little clunkier, frankly. But I'm used to really fast services, and there's a whole genre of admins and developers that go to conferences like Velocity that deal in web scale and web speed. Architectures, and there's a whole lot of tricks that they've developed for being, for fast page reads, to make it feel like the whole app is screamingly fast for millions of people. And it's just that kind of stuff just hasn't filtered down into enterprise technologies yet, and we're stuck with things that one executive was talking about an app that we use internally at VMware, or I forget if it was the executive or the non-executive, but one of the two was saying it feels like it was designed in Soviet Russia. No offense to Soviet Russians on the call, but it feels.
Hey.
Oh, I'm seeing how many times I can.
It's the Google thing. In Soviet Russia, Google searches for you.
But
people don't know that.
We all know what we mean. You when you say enterprise app, you normally don't get real excited about it, and so I'm thinking what's happening is that some of this, as we talk about consumerization of IT, it doesn't just apply to devices. It can also apply to the apps that you're building in-house. And my God, what a concept that an enterprise application would be fast enough to delight their user and be easy enough to use. I don't know. Am I living in fantasy land, Carter, or is that you see that happening?
There is definitely a Google effect out there. People say, hey, I can search all the world's information in less than 1/10 of a second. Why is this internal org chart thing taking 10 minutes? So yeah, there's definitely a Google effect that it sets a perception, and even they've gone so far recently as to it affects your page rank. Now, if your site is slow, you get kicked down the page rank on Google, and so there's definitely an effect that people need to get closer to real time, and that's driving a lot of this shift, not just to NoSQL but also to in-memory and other architectures that can scale better and handle peak load better and so forth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, cool. And is this an open source and free product, SQLFire, or do you have to pay for it?
It's a commercial product. We have the beta is public, but it's not an open source project. It is a commercial product.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, great. That sounds kind of cool. I think it's been interesting as I hear internally, as we keep now we're starting to hear more stories of people going in and retooling their apps with kind of some of the toolkit that VMware has developed with vFabric, and it's really kind of interesting. I don't know how many of those stories we share, but some of the internal ones I've been kind of impressed by what people are able to do by taking an old enterprise application and refitting it with some modern components and modern architecture. I mean, it's exciting. If I was an app, if I was an app developer, I would be excited.
If I was an app, I would want to run on that infrastructure.
If I was an app, I would be an iPhone fart app, frankly. But I don't know. So it sounds like exciting days. Carter, can you tell us anything else that you're working on? I know you're working on some other projects as well. But how are you seeing the vFabric side of the world developing these days?
Well, we got a pretty good bit of stuff going on. I am working on a project called Elastic Memory for Java. I am speaking on that particular subject at VMworld, so people can learn more about it. But the idea there is to make Java applications run better on ESX in terms of higher consolidation and overcommit ratios, which right now is something that doesn't work particularly well with Java, but we're working on that.
And because Java has some very particular ways it wants to use its own memory heap and things like that.
Well, Java kind of grew up in an era where it knew that it was on physical hardware, and it can just take all the memory it wants because nothing else is going to be running on that box anyway. And so it doesn't play nice. It likes to grab all the blocks in the toy box, and it will bite you if you try to grab one. So,
and that's right, and that's the interesting intersection of where IT infrastructure people have to pay attention to what the workloads are that are running on their machines, right?
Yeah,
you can't just ignore it. You can't just say a workload is a workload. Well, if it's a Java workload and it doesn't play well, you've got to know a little more, or collaborate with your developer app owner colleagues.
Agree. So we're trying to move the bar forward on that, and I'll be talking about that at VMworld. But we do have quite a lot going on. We've got some stuff I can't quite talk about, but we'll have some announcements. I think actually there's an announcement next week about vFabric that I won't try to steal anybody's thunder. But
great. Okay. Well, this is really great. I gotta close it down because I got my next meeting going on. But so Carter, thanks for coming by and telling us a little bit about SQLFire, the beta. The community site is live. You can find out about it. Or
hit it. I think we've got a redirect that either works now or will work later. It's vmware.com/go/SQLFire. I wonder if that got
okay.
stopped.
Good.
It wasn't working yesterday, but
I posted the link earlier in chat.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks, Mike.
Cool.
It's still not working, but use Mike's link. Or if you could post it, that would be good, John.
Yeah, okay, we'll try to do that. Somebody please save the chat history. I had to log in, log out here. And it actually has its own, does it have its own blog?
It does. It even does. And
wow.
even has a post with a video on it. I worked hard on that, and I hope you like it.
Good. The blog police, let that one out. We're trying to consolidate blogs.
Well, I don't buy into that notion, to be quite honest. I think that's wrong-headed. And well, anyway, I told Tony, what the hell are you thinking? Is Tony on the call? Hope not.
Tony's not on the
call.
call.
Strike that from the record.
We're all collaborative. Well, I mean, what's going on, and again, we're a little bit off topic, but, we have so many blogs, and most of them were dead, so we were trying to consolidate audiences and traffic. But the exception should be made for different audiences or for very specialized subjects. Or for things that are just different. But if you have a dead blog, nobody goes to it, so that's the problem.
Yeah, well, I say organize your own search, and I think this dead blog problem it's fundamentally one that you feel compelled to list everything out, and I think that's just not structuring.
Yeah. Anyway. We probably need a better entry point so that you don't notice the dead blogs and they can just live
that would be better.
And I think we're working on that too.
Yeah, the thing I hate the most is when we see these blogs that have every topic under the sun, and there's no person on earth who could possibly be interested in everything on that blog. It just really irks me.
Well, we are. I mean, the interesting thing I think is that the people that, for instance, listen to this podcast have to be generalists of a sort on the infrastructure side, right? We over and over again we've had the conversation that or we're talking about vExperts, right? Do we separate them? So let's say in a future year, do we separate infrastructure versus ops? Well, some companies are done that way, but a lot of people, on the infrastructure side are interested in ops, or, where are the dividing line in people's job roles? And it's hard to draw those circles, especially, going forward. Networking, security, servers, storage. It's hard to treat those as completely separate because a lot of times the virtualization team spans them. So it's not a simple problem. It's an interesting problem, though.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Interesting problems.
Problem.
May we all have lots of interesting problems. Hey, Carter, thanks everybody. Scott and Martine, thank you for coming on the show. Next week is a really good show. It's not very. I don't know how technical we'll get, but we've got Javier Soltero, who is our CTO of apps and SaaS and all that sort of good stuff. We're going to talk about what the F is VMware doing with all these apps. I think I'll call it something else. I think the official title will be slightly different, but that's what we'll talk about. So it sounds really interesting. He's a CTO of that department and a super sharp guy, and so who knows where we're going to go. I'm going to have fun. I hope you guys will too. Anyway, thanks everybody. It's been a great show.
Good.